of collaboration, communication, cooperation and so on, and I did throw in a little random throwback to the 80s of Across the Nation, and when I looked back on the video, everybody else was like and Gail was sat at the front going
I think you should do it every time.
So thank you for that. So it was strategically placed in case I do another tumbleweed.
Okay, yeah, I'll make sure I laugh.
Have another tumbleweed moment. Good morning. Come
I'm
in.
sorry.
No, you're all right. Absolutely fine. Just ask you to stand in. We've only just started, so you haven't missed anything apart from me confessing to a really bad joke. We've just done introductions actually, so sorry to throw you straight in.
My name's Zoe. I'm from the Cathedral. So I don't know how much we're not doing a great deal of third sector work at the moment, but we would like to be.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks so much. So we started off with 5 C's, and we came away with 7, which was fantastic because everybody contributed, as per the brief, and added a couple more. So we now have contribution, connection, collateral, community, communication. I haven't said that already, have I? Collaboration and celebration. So we'll do it.
We're filming some
Just
definitely.
keep trying. I think you just keep trying until people start doing it.
Until people appreciate
Yeah.
it. Yeah, okay. Will do. It's just me again. So each table had a sheet, and they wrote a little bit about some or all of those C's. So what we've done is to collate those comments, and what we'd like to do now is to have your involvement again, have your input again, and just kind of go around, have a look at them, make sure that they're kind of a true and accurate reflection of what you remember, but also to now let's start drilling down and making an action plan of how we want to take these things forward. What are our priorities? Do we want to focus on just one, or do we want at a time and nail that and move on to another, or do we want to try and have a flavour of each of these things in what we do at the meetings, but also when we leave meetings within our organisations? Does that make sense? So what we'd like you to do is to grab a pen, colour of your choice, doesn't really matter. If you'd like to have a look at the sheets that were done by each table last time, then they are all here. And just have a wander around the different sheets. And if you can put your 1, 2 and 3, so just put numbers 1, 2 and 3 on each sheet of what you think out of all these suggestions and comments you see as the priorities to take forward. Is that okay? Yes, it doesn't matter what colour pen it is, as long as you're just putting your 1, 2
Can I
and
just
3.
ask a question?
Yes.
A lot of them is all connected, so interconnected.
There are some, do you mean there's some duplication?
What,
No, yeah.
Things that cross over.
There are things that cross over, yeah, definitely.
So just being brutal and picking the topic.
Be brutal,
Right, okay.
but also there is room for notes, so if you want to add any other comments, or come and grab another piece of paper and add some more comments, then feel free to put that on as well, even just to elaborate on why. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, go for it, grab a pen. That's what you have to do anyway.
Yes.
Yes. On the
Were you at the last one?
Not on the wall.
On the floor.
Do you know which the extra C's are?
So these are from, these are one we wrote last time and we just collated from. But it might be useful to have a look before you. And then when you have the yes.
I presume, yeah, because
There was a really good question at the end of this meeting. I really enjoyed it.
1, 2, 3 for each one, I think. And that's how I interpreted that.
So the idea is,
Yeah.
Have you got that? Is it 1, 2, 3 for each sheet? Or is it 1, 2, 3?
1, 2, 3 over the sheet. Paula,
Yes.
sorry, can we just clarify? Is it 1, 2, 3 for each sheet?
Yes. Yes. 1, 2, 3 on each sheet.
Yeah.
So that would be 2 I'm just thinking like 1, 1, 2, 1, 3 for the whole.
Oh, good Lord, no, it's hard to look for one.
Which should be explained as part of it. Just in a way about trim point to favour and be up open to the invest.
I feel like we should have some mood music.
They're not going to influence me.
No, don't look at my number.
I'm going to go to strange pictures.
Oh, Tracy wanted to draw on the walls. I'm like, no, Tracy. So there's no right and wrong, and it doesn't really kind of matter to us if.
No, get red pen out with
I know.
super answers.
Have you?
Yeah, thank you. We haven't lost everything, but there was only.
That was a caveat.
Put two little antenna, I don't know.
Looks like it. Number 13 now.
Oh, homage to 80.
I'm not going to Superman.
I was going to say, yeah. I just said to her, love it. The door's not locked. It's okay.
Oh, you go for it. I'm mowing.
I'm still mowing. I'm quite still mowing as well.
I don't think I held up that half of the room. I'm like, sorry.
So do you like the masks at all?
Not really, to be honest, we're at the, with everything, not mostly big things, we're at a starting point, we haven't done it.
Maybe very handy.
That would be great.
No, I don't know. I'm actually going to do I didn't waste it, but I was going to. I do, but I'm still like. It depends. where I live is some of the meetings and stuff. But we're setting up a pot. We set up a pot for the army. We've got 3. Yeah. But this one's going to be set up at Duke of York Street. So it's Sainsbury's Walk.
I think that's it, me too.
Obviously, it's not going to be till the inspector.
Right,
Yeah, it's separate entrance on the back, so you know you can go to the mosque. I suggested that to our organisation, do some sort of
But yeah, I'll speak to do it today.
Yeah. Yeah.
She was I went to the last one, she was in the
Where am I looking for? Yeah. Yeah.
Should be really Christmas music now.
If anybody hasn't found them, needs them, toilets are just out of here, back to the main entrance and turn right. Toilets there. There we go. Oh no. We're doing 2 one ships, 1 spring next week. Can't read pink and white. You can't what? Can't read pink and white. Dyslexic. Oh, okay. Can't read on the right. Got to? No, I'm fine. I don't have any fighting. You can.
This bit is there. So, working out my community. Who else needs to go in the community?
Can't have a laugh at this song, Is this Andy's music?
Yes.
He obviously needs that to get
Yeah.
intense right
There.
me singing in the shower, obviously.
Our first warm spaces last Thursday at South Kirby.
Successful.
Packed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's fully booked now till Christmas. Yeah. And we've only capped it because of the size of the room. We would have more if we could. But,
I mean, that's bad.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Some people say they will do it because they might feel stigmatised by thinking I can't that's detrimental to you guys. Absolutely. And what you guys offer, like I would bring, knowing who you are, I would go back.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to go. Even if I want to struggle, I would fit, get involved,
Yeah.
I know that. It's more than a warm space, isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And we have worked in South Care before, so you won't in places like, well, like anywhere, you only need 1 or 2 champions, cheerleaders to spread the word and push them off. So yeah, it was good. But our cooking equipment hadn't turned up, so all back home. We had to nip down the chicken with chicken nuggets and chicken. They're good. Actually, they're good.
Warm meal.
They were fine. They might not be quite so thrilled with the beefy mince and mash that we get tonight, but yeah, but no, they were lovely. But you what? Totally, yeah. No. I was but yeah, so there was a lady, all the ladies came in, managed to tiny babies. And Andrew was just like,
Oh no.
we got family the other day. I've got loads of I've got. Do you want any more? They're not long.
Yeah, because they shift 4. And you've got 5. So you give some more, actually no chance. No more. It cuts off in June, it's making shit. It's shit, okay, I got. Yeah, I've got 3 girls. 2 were very close together and were very and then things, the 3rd one came should have met a neighbour around to first, so it's probably fine.
Yes, but the way I found out was we went and had a meeting with our accountant. Yeah, I've got a big and I was saying how Jackie's wife is doing very well, so we get stuff like that related to us, sort of like, oh, she's not bringing it. I mean, you can do it.
About a week later, just all the kind of stomach pains and sickness and all the kind of difficulty. Yes.
You expect not to
I told you. Especially for
Right, everyone, so you can put you all in short, right? This next bit, to be fair, is you made it a lot easier because looking at what you've put, there's really kind of clear kind of definitive areas where you put your, as a priority and where you put your 2s and 3s. The next part is really the purpose of this thing that's been created. What do we want the 3rd sector leaders group to be? So last week there was a discussion about being a more kind of slightly more formal thing with a bit more policy and a bit more bulk behind it. Some people talk about kind of casual thing where it's just here and it's just there and that's it. It's now open to everyone really. What do you want this thing that we've created over COVID to be? I know that there's a massive connection with Nova in terms of what we're doing with you. There's a lot of support we've been provided. Myself and Paula get a small fee to chair this, but it's not a full-time salary, so kind of if there's expectation of kind of turning this into a massive organisation of beautifulness, it probably won't happen in the way that some people may have, who came last time, may have thought. So it's kind of open arena. What do you want the purpose of this? I say thing because we are going to change the name. So
yes, we need to cover
so
that.
at the moment, third sector leaders group. What do we want this to be? So
Can I just ask, really put Maggie on the spot actually. Tracy made a comment earlier, because what we don't want to do is to blur the lines between sort of Nova and the third sector leaders group. Would you mind just giving us some clarity over where you see Nova and this group and how we work together, please?
Absolutely. I mean, Nova's role ultimately is to facilitate and enable, and it feels like everything and anything for the sector. You know, if people come and say this is what we need, we'll explore that. So it isn't necessarily for Nova to do it, so that's why Nova's not kind of standing here. It's for Nova to support, so we can do all the secretariat, we can do all the Eventbrites, we can make sure that you are compensated for your time, we can do all of that, and you know, if you need support as leaders of the group, you know, that would be there. So I think the distinction is facilitating, not doing, would be a very simple answer. I mean, if you want to go into more detail, I can, but that's how I see it. That this is a group, and it can be whatever we want. I'm here as a participant, you know, and I know what I would want from the group. But we're all here together, and it's what everybody wants and where we see the group going. And people might want different things at different times, and that's all going to be part of the evolution as well, I imagine. So yeah, it's a for me it's a really open group. Nova can sort of just make sure it's here and doing the kind of legwork underneath or behind the scenes. But yeah, it's absolutely belonging to everybody in this room, and fantastically Paula and Andy have said that they'll lead us in that. So yeah, I think for me it's quite clear. If it isn't for anyone else, I'm happy to have a more of a discussion.
But really sort of for the group to be able to gather findings and almost sort of bring it back and inform and influence potentially, and help steer in partnership. Would that be fair?
Absolutely.
we're very
Working group.
I think it is. I think it definitely has potential to be a working group, and I think the more of this that we do, and the more we talk, and the more we say, well, actually, like the skills gap stuff, what have we got in the collateral? So this has come back quite clearly as identifying the gaps that we have, and how do we collate all that, analyse it, and then act upon it. So it's very much, I think, as Maggie says, you know, what do you want? What do we need to do to facilitate that, and then do it and bring it back to you with Nova support.
having it more informal, is that a more suitable kind of approach? So I mean, I don't want to put my opinion on things too much, but the informalness and the casualness that we have, you know, probably play music and things, I personally like that approach. I think it makes people more warming about it. It's not an agenda, we don't have minutes as such, we don't record things in a certain way. Obviously we have a footage to record in case people can't come today, but it's not a very serious, I'm not a serious person, so I can't really do that serious things. So having it less formal and kind of very informal, very warm and welcoming to people, whether they can come every time or they can only come every so often, we're open to that and we're happy to have that. I think it's a case of having a warm, happy place where people can come and voice their concerns with things, talk about, you know, about celebrating failure for me is a really, really big thing, about things that didn't work well. We did this in this area, it didn't work well. There's nothing wrong with that, nothing wrong or feeling kind of upset about failing at something, I think we should celebrate that more and more. I think having this environment where we can do this more, I think is a lovely thing to have. And I think if we can communicate with ourselves and put things forward and put ideas together, we can move forward together as a kind of entity, if that makes more sense.
Can I just say, to me, it's actually, I don't want to come and just talk about stuff, I want to see action.
Yeah.
And I also recognise that a lot of us are from very small charities with very limited resources and time. So it's actually, how is that action going to happen? So we've all probably got loads of ideas of what we'd like to see happen, but in reality, with limited time and resources, how is it going to happen? So I know, like with Tracy's mental health, you know, your wonderful newsletter that you do and the amount of time and effort that goes into that and supports so many people, but that's Tracy, she has a job, that is part of her job. So yeah, sharing resources, I'd love the whole sharing resources, but somebody is going to have to do that and spend the time and effort doing that. So it's kind of, I think you say not having minutes, but in some ways, I think some action points and actually who's going to deliver it, we need that. Otherwise, if it is just going to be a networking group where we come and have a chat and make, you know, connections, let's call it that. But yeah, hopefully it's going to be more than that. So that's my only, I think we need to be really realistic about what we've got in the room and what we can do and the people that can offer more, or if there's funding available to offer more. So yeah.
It might evolve into, it may start off as a very simple networking group, and then it may evolve into something so much bigger, and that's that. I mean, we've got no, we're very open to the idea of being what it was, and I think both our styles are, we're not forcing people to, you know, we're not saying, well, we're chair, we're going to do it this way. We don't want that. We're very much in collaborating with people and working with people to move this entity forward. And if that's what is needed, then so be it.
And I think if a big piece of work is identified, we speak to Nova and we just say, you know, is there support for this to happen? It's just conversation. Oh, simplicity.
I agree with all that, but I also think that we shouldn't underestimate the power of creating the space for thinking and conversation, because I think out of that comes the action.
Yeah.
Like, we can all go into action quite quickly without just saying, hang on a minute, let's just take it a step back, let's create a space where we can just think this through. So this might be a group where I'd like to bring an idea to, and to say, this is something I'm thinking of working on, is there a role that anybody else can play in that? Have I got the right angle? Should we do something entirely different? So it is a space where actions come out after that moment of, have we really thought this through and used all of the wonderful assets that everybody's got in this room to build it?
Yeah, 100%. And we want people to come and present, we want people to come and talk about their projects, we want people to ask for help. This is a completely safe space for all of that to happen, and that's how it should be. You know, we're a group together. So just going around the room, does anybody have any kind of standout observations? There's a lot of commonality, the ones and twos definitely. But did anybody have a kind of standout, definite priority?
Well, for me, I think it's a game of two halves really, and I think that's what these kind of comments are about. So I think there's a need for that informal support network. But then there's a lot of talk on, so I wasn't at the last one, but there seems to be a lot of talk on these about celebrating the group and what the group has done and having group statements. Well, that's when you need minutes and you need agreements and voting, don't you? So I think there's a bit of a tension. We want two things that aren't necessarily the same thing. And I kind of take your point. I think we can start informal and it might build up, and then maybe we need funding to move things on. But I think we need to be clear who we are right now and what it is we're trying to achieve. And if we're saying we want to start as an informal network, I'm happy with, I want both. Really, I want both. And I appreciate that you two probably cannot provide both. So I just think we just need a bit of clarity when we are having conversations. Are we mulling things over, or are we actually trying to come up with a plan of action? Because then that would need to be documented.
Yeah, I think so. How we kind of opened last time was saying that our only really sort of vision for the group is to become more connected with the rest of the district. So not to work in a silo, certainly not to work necessarily within silos within our group, but as a group to connect better with local authority, with people like the Mayor of West Yorkshire, you know, get her to a meeting to talk about her work and how that impacts Wakefield and how we can go into that. So to really, and the private sector, you know, there's a circular economy has made a couple of appearances, because really we all work to benefit the well-being of our communities and the wider community of Wakefield. And that if we've got healthier, happier individuals, employers have got healthier, happier, more efficient employees, workforce, which potentially can then make them more profitable. They can expand, they can give better wages, they can take on apprenticeship. It all works, and just so really we want to have that full connection. So we will be inviting people in from those different sectors, and asking people from this group to collaborate differently as well, if that makes sense, over time.
We have like a thing so each week, because obviously we don't, some of us don't know what everyone does in the book. I think it's a bit of introduction.
Yeah.
But for example, if we take Mine City Sanctuary, we don't need it, we're fine, but say for example, we would come in and do like a what?
Cold press.
Yeah, exactly. You can make some money by telling our story. So we like have a short presentation of what we did. I'll get someone else to know what I'm doing. And maybe say what, so everyone gets a chance to have a little session to say what they're actually strong, where they're at. So if we've got some of the new organisations, you know, we've just started out, we've just done this, however, we really need to know how to get volunteers, how we need space, whatever. And then by standing there and saying that, you've got people in the room that say, well actually our organisation can help with this, our organisation can help with that. Rather than sort of individual groups in between talking to each other.
Yeah.
And then we get to hear, because it may be that some of the room's got an issue with something that we might not help with, but we haven't heard it because everyone's in, do you know what I mean? So it's,
Yeah, I mean, that can be the whole next meeting.
yeah, so they can bring the problems out.
Yeah.
This is what we really need help with.
Yeah, just put off the collateral about focus on the what gaps do we have, and I think that fits perfectly, and that may fit with both ideas where a problem is brought forward and an action plan, a solution, or a working plan is put in place to try to resolve or solve or improve that situation.
The connection happens straight away then, because
Yeah.
you're in the room. So it's,
That 100%. That's what.
I suppose the next thing for Rugby would to ask what gaps do we have then, and everybody was to bring forward a kind of what gaps are there in your organisation and what you're experiencing out in the community and what you're struggling with and how we can bring that forward, and maybe a case of putting polls or putting something out there, surveys before the meeting, that way we've got a running start before rather than spend 15 minutes talking to everyone and bring it forward, put a survey out there or put out some sort of poll out there. People can bring out the gaps, could be volunteer recruitment or something, and then maybe that's when we can discuss it. People can put ideas forward that's worked for them, and then that way we've got a plan of action before the meeting finishes.
Yeah, and then equally, know we can signpost, obviously, because there's that resources there
maybe
as
we
well.
wouldn't need to do presentations because you guys can do it.
Kat, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just saying like that's a really good idea, and I think that could also take up a lot of the group in terms of time. So I think when we spoke about last time about a Facebook group or a WhatsApp group, I know because I work on my own a majority of the time. If I need to know something, I generally ask Tracy a lot. But you can be waiting a long time for somebody to reply to an email, and that's not being negative. That's just So to be able to put that in a group and say, does anyone know where I could find a draft policy, or and just for somebody to pick that up. I think that would be really helpful, rather than waiting a month to come here. Well, this is what I need, and then it all becomes a massive conversation and takes up a lot of time.
So we will set up a closed Facebook group. We can do that this afternoon. Obviously Facebook has come out as being the favoured medium for kind of a public page or public group. But what I'd really like to get the new name nailed down first. So 16th of December, we've only had 2 entries so far, and don't forget there is a £50 meal voucher.
Please get something, because I'm one of those entries and my idea is rubbish.
Yeah, so but we haven't disclosed it yet, so something else could win. No, but it was ideas, wasn't it? So Maddie, thank you.
Thank you. I think there's different techniques that we can use within the group as well. You know, if as we're starting out, we do all want to get to know each other, we could do a speed dating session where we literally have kind of, you know, a few minutes and we just kind of share super quick, you know, you're super focused, you know you're doing it in advance, so you kind of got your what you want to say in your head, and that's a really nice way of everybody kind of speaking to everyone. I think when it gets into sort of meatier issues, because you're absolutely right, you know, you don't want to wait a month for a policy. Someone can just say, I've got a perfect one, I'll send it over, do what you want with it. You know, that's a 5-minute thing, but there might be meatier issues that people want to bring. There's things like a fishbowl where people sit in the middle and start a discussion, and then other people, as they've got something to say, tap the shoulder of someone and join that discussion, and so people come in and out of the discussion, and that's quite a nice way. We could go on to more formal things like action learning sets, because what I didn't see on any of the posters was anything around our personal development.
Okay.
You know, I haven't kind of seen much of that. That, you know, it's about bringing speakers in and stuff, but bringing people in that can really help us develop as leaders.
Yeah.
For me, there's something about us as individuals, and then there's something about us and our organisations.
Yeah. Love that.
So I think there's loads of different things that we can bring in, and you know, Nova can put resource towards it because we'll be ticking other outcomes, you know, so it's from our point of view. So I think we just, that is just an option, isn't it? That there might be, there's really nice ways of discussing those meaty issues, and you come out with actions then. So it's not just talking, but you do have the time to sit and talk and think it through, and then you have action at the end.
Yeah. And again, it's for people to tell us who we need to bring in, and again, not making sure that we're not duplicating the small resources that Nova already provide, or even just signposting that people might not be aware. Okay. So, any other kind of burning point? Obviously, with the second meeting was still scoping, so we're still kind of gathering what you guys want this to be, really. So hopefully we're going in the right direction. Any other kind of burning issues before we ask Lydia to come and speak about BCSE voices?
I think the fact that we've...
Not you.
You've had your chance.
I think the fact we're open to the idea that it evolves, the fact we're not very fixed minded on this is this and that's it. We're very open to the idea that it's going to evolve and going to change, and in 6 months, 8 months, maybe a year's time, it's going to be something slightly different to what we didn't kind of foresee at the start, and we're open and happy for that to happen. As long as it makes a difference and impact in your organisation or charity or school, or whatever you are as self, if it makes a difference, then that's what we're here for. If it's not making a difference, then it's a case of what can we do to change?
Can we just meet up for a brew in the shop?
Yeah, can we change it? Can we adapt it, or can we just simply fold it if that's the case?
Just say a couple of things. First of all, I think it's a really good way of doing it. I mean, obviously we're public health, but this kind of approach we're trying to do as well. So we'll be working in those communities that you talked about in this way. So I think that's kind of learning for us, so it's reciprocal. But I think just another thing is about behaviours. You mentioned methods, didn't you? But it's about behaviours of the group. So there's some things on there that aren't necessarily in silo. Equality, diversity and inclusion doesn't have to be on one.
No.
They're the behaviours that underpin the group. So you can kind of cross them off there because they're just things that you have to do and should do.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
I think that the culture and behaviour, I think it's vital. I think I've seen that firsthand with our running and walking fit groups where there's so much positivity in the groups. There's no negativity, and people that do bring negativity in, they don't last long. We don't discourage them.
We don't kill them either.
We don't. Although we have been training on that. Getting a gun license. But the people that don't bring that happiness in, they just...
It's not their vibe, is it? You've
No.
always passion tribe, isn't it?
Yeah, and that culture of happiness and positivity is surrounding people that do start to you can see how they change from being slightly kind of scared about the situation, and then by week 3, week 4, when they come, they flourish in themselves. In fact, I saw it last night with 2 people that's been doing it for 4 weeks now. And you can see that how they're coming out more and more. So hopefully, the positive we hopefully put out to people, there'll be more and more conversation, more and more celebration.
So thank you, everybody. Lydia, may we introduce you to the stage? What? Sorry?
I just stuck my
Oh,
I'm just ignoring it. You're on my list now.
Sorry, Mike.
I'll plug in while
Oh, you plug.
I think I'd just like us all to challenge ourselves. We want this to be an open group. We will be speaking for other leaders that just aren't able to come at this time or whatever. So I do want us to see ourselves as an open and inclusive group, but I think we should really challenge ourselves around the diversity and the equity, because looking around the room today, we're not the most diverse bunch. So I think we've probably actively got to work at that. So I think I'd like us to challenge ourselves on that as well, because the more diverse group we have, the richer it will be, etc.
Sorry, how do we know about diverse people in the room? Because you can't tell by looking at somebody. If I told you all that I was Muslim, what, hey? We don't know who's diverse in the room really, unless they've got a label. I have ADHD, which I'm going to talk too much. I'm dyslexic, so we have got diversity in the room, but maybe people are not disclosed, because I don't usually come out and say I've got ADHD, but people usually guess because I talk too much. But things like being a Muslim at the minute, it's still very much a process, so it's not something that generally come out, so we have got diversity in the room.
I suppose that's why we need to have that conversation and have that open conversation with people and
actively include, encourage and invite.
Well, it's
Because it is that stereotype of, because I'm not Asian, can't be Muslim, so it's things like that, and that's when diversity that comes in, stereotyping people, just assuming they're not.
But there are groups in the district that aren't here, and that's probably the kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
They were here last time.
It's more diverse
Yeah.
last time.
And I think again, one of the things that has stood out is actually something that you've all put as number 1 too, is messaging, and that speaks directly to that. And I think one voice, basically, we hold ourselves to high standards as individuals, as organisations, but actually we speak in the same tone when it comes to, because and messaging, we should blatantly say we welcome everybody, so that we can, I'll probably work on that with our listening as well. But thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Lydia. Sit down.
Right. Well, I'll reintroduce myself, because if you're anything like me, you need a reminder. So I'm Lydia Baldwin. I'm an advisor at Nova, relatively new. So I started at the end of September, and so it's lovely to meet some of you in person and to share a little bit about what I've been working on since then, which is this project called VCSE Voices. And so this is just going to be, this is a really big project, which is going to take a few years to get everything up and running, and it's going to involve a lot of people. So this is just a kind of introduction, some basics of what it is, why we're doing it, and how we're going to do it. And I'm sharing with you in the hope that you'll all be really interested in being involved, and also that you can pass on this information to other groups in your network, because it's only going to be as successful as the kind of people that we have involved. So I hope you'll find it interesting. So VCSE Voices is a kind of a new project, a new initiative, which is all about increasing opportunities for people in community and voluntary groups to kind of have a say in decision-making processes, to have a voice, to have influence, to have those leadership opportunities, and to be around the table at meetings where kind of important decisions happen, where there's discussion about challenges and needs and what we should be doing. And it's about making sure that people like yourselves from organisations that run things in the voluntary and community sector are at those meetings. And so VCSE Voices is recruiting leaders from our sector to attend strategic decision-making meetings. And I will just say that it says senior leaders, but we're defining that as anybody who has kind of really good, strong experience within our sector. So you don't have to be a CEO, you don't have to be a trustee, just if you've got lots of really good experience and think that you could advocate for our sector, then this is for you. So we're recruiting advocates to attend boards. So there's loads and loads of board meetings, various meetings that happen across Wakefield district. Lots of things within the local authority, within public health, NHS, relating to absolutely everything and anything. So the list is really long, but some of these boards include things like health, so the Wakefield District Health and Care Partnership, adult services around safeguarding, the Learning Disability and Autism Partnership Board, and also Children and Young People's Board. So there's loads of these meetings that happen. And these are just a few examples. When this whole process comes back, you'll have lots more information about what actually happens at these boards. And we're also working with some partners, so Young Lives, for example, on Children and Young People's Boards. So the advocates will attend these boards to kind of be there as a voice for our sector, and we're calling them, so at the moment we've gone with the name VCSE Advocate, and you might think of it a bit more like a representative, and that's sort of what the role is, but we've gone with advocate to recognise that not one person could represent everybody in the sector, can't speak on behalf of every group or everybody's experience, and instead that one person is there to advocate for everybody and kind of share people's experiences and feedback. But we are doing a big part of this work as well is consultancy, so we're going to have some sessions where you can tell us if you think this is a good name or if it isn't a good name, and you can suggest alternatives, so that's very much part of it. But at the moment the suggested name is that the people who are recruited will be called VCSE Advocates. And they'll go to the board. There'll be deputies as well, so you know, just in terms of that capacity, so they have support, and that's kind of where we're at with it. And then the idea is that we will recruit lots of advocates who all go to different boards, and then they will all come together into a sort of a shared space for supporting each other, for kind of feeding back about what's happened at meetings, for identifying themes that have happened at meetings, kind of all that sort of shared learning. And they'll all come together within this group, which is called VCSE Voices. And it will be a place for peer support, for sharing ideas, for relaying information about what's happened at boards, really so that there's that feedback, so that everybody's informed, because the kind of overall why is that everybody knows what's going on, people have more input in the decision making. And hopefully within this space, we really hope that the advocates aren't just going to attend on the kind of terms of the boards, but they're also going to have a bit more influence and say about kind of bringing things to those agendas as well, and not setting the pace, if you like, but having more leadership, so there'll be hopefully a bit of kind of collective empowerment and you know, within this space. That's the hope. And this VCSE Voices space will be not dissimilar to this, in that it will be very much run by the advocates that are in that group. It'll be chaired by the advocates that are in that group, and facilitated by Nova. So it does belong to the voluntary and community groups. And a really important part of this is two-way communication. So we want our advocates to go to the board meetings to kind of broadcast the views and needs of people in the sector, but also that information and the discussion that happens in those board meetings is given back to the group, so that there's this two-way communication. And we've thought of a few mechanisms for how this might work, including advocates having a debrief with someone from an infrastructure support, so maybe like myself or someone from Young Lives, where they can, just upload the main points that happened in the meeting, if there are any action points, if there's any feedback that they would like to give the meeting itself and points that they would like to take. And we can use these forms, maybe have them collated on our website somewhere. Also things like WhatsApp groups, so that all the advocates can, I know you've already discussed about you're having Facebook groups, but that's sort of very responsive and reactive support. So it's not just go to a meeting and then 2 months down the line you've got a really long document. It's something that's a bit more in real time, maybe kind of short video updates. But again, this is all going to be up for kind of that consultation, so that you can tell us what the best way is to have that two-way communication. And the idea, hopefully, is that this whole piece of work will ensure kind of more joined up thinking, more sharing of knowledge, ensuring that everybody knows what's happening, what's on the agenda, and the idea really, hopefully, as is kind of shown, is that the advocates will go to the board meetings, they'll give information from our sector to the board, they'll come out of these, they'll give information to the VCSE Voices group, and we'll share that with the wider sector meetings and members, so these sorts of spaces, and with infrastructure support to kind of share that all around. And all of these other spaces will also give information back to the advocates, who will then take all of that back to the board meeting, so that we get this sort of circularity of communication, and hopefully that will mean that when these decisions are happening, our kind of your views and needs are really taken into consideration. So I think the why is quite obvious, but it's about all these things really, just so that our sector is kind of authentically represented. It has a place at that table. There's influence and there's opportunities for you to kind of lead on important decisions that affect the way your groups work and the context in which your groups work. So I'll talk briefly about the how, but it is a really a big thing, and it is evolving, and it will change. So at the moment we're doing a bit of mapping on all those boards. So that those boards, a few of those examples I gave, we're trying to look and identify all of those ones that exist and where people like yourselves and our advocates need to go, so that we ensure that we're kind of represented at all the important meetings. And we're also developing some role profiles, not dissimilar to kind of a job role, so that the advocates know what it is that's being expected of them, what meeting they'll go to, what they've got to do. So that's all being developed. We're doing some promotion and events to try and hopefully get as much interest, to get lots and lots of people involved. I think everybody who wants to be involved will and can be involved, and that's very much our hope. And so we're just doing some kind of bit of promotion now, but in January, on the 19th of January, we're going to have a kind of a dedicated event to share a bit more information about this. We've got a bit of a recruitment process. The plan is that we will advertise these roles, and people can send a really short video or a written statement about why they want to be involved, and then hopefully we're going to have some informal group interviews where lots of different people who are interested come together for a more kind of discussion focused interview, and they get matched up to these boards. But this is all kind of up for consultation, and we really want you to tell us how it should work. So we've put together a little survey, which I'm sure I can email round to you all, to gather your thoughts about how this should work, everything, the names, the recruitment process, the interview, all that stuff, so you can tell us if this initial kind of proposal is sort of right or sort of wrong or completely wrong. You can tell us, and it is important that we kind of are co-producing this as best we can. And then we'll also have some focus groups in the new year to kind of build on this survey, where you can tell us a bit more in person, and we can workshop some ideas about how this will work. And it is a work in progress, and I imagine that it will evolve and change as we go. And so also just to mention that So I've been to some of these meetings myself, and they're not necessarily the most accessible thing, and so we're going to have a big package of support around enabling people to become advocates in recognition that we want as many people to be involved as possible. So there's going to be lots of support, things, training induction. There'll be kind of pre-briefs for meetings where we'll kind of go over who's going to be in the room, maybe like collate the agenda so that you know the key points ahead of the meeting. We'll identify any kind of development needs you might have and that you want support with. There'll be peer support within the VCSE Voices. There'll be lots of kind of one-to-one support opportunities with advisors. There's going to be lots of secretariat support because I think we acknowledge that there's a really big capacity burden on people's time going to these meetings. So all sorts of support with actions after meetings. If you need to kind of get feedback from more people in the sector, we'll help with that. We can help with anything really. And we want training and development to be a big part of it. And hopefully we'll facilitate some chances to observe board meetings if for people who are interested, and there'll be succession planning so that people can be part of the VCSE Voices space and then take over from a VCSE advocate if and when they need to stand down. And also the VCSE advocates there is backfill, so the time that you commit to preparing for and attending the meetings will be reimbursed. So that's just a kind of a quick overview of what it is, and I really hope that you'll all be interested in getting involved. And there's lots of roles, so you can be an advocate, or you can attend focus groups, or you can be part of the VCSE Voices network. So with you becoming an advocate when you're ready, and we want as many people to be involved as possible. So please do tell anyone and everyone that you know who might be interested about it. And we have a form where you can, at this stage, just tell us that you're interested in taking part. We don't have any kind of, we're not advertising roles at the moment, but we want to know if you're interested. So I can send that to you as well, along with the community consultation form. And that's it from me really, but I'm happy to take any questions at this point if anybody does have any.
Thank you, Lydia.
Can I just ask one question? I've been in the VCS and I'm working with public health, but I think it's fantastic, and I think the challenge isn't necessarily, well, it might be a challenge, it's recruiting people, it's power dynamics. So actually when you go to boards and meetings, and I've been there and I've been there and all the rest of it, it's that equity. So you can train your advocates up really well, and I'm sure you will, but you have to train the board up too, because it can't just be a tokenistic, I'm going to sit here from the VCS. That person and that chair has to understand the value of what you're doing.
Yeah.
So how are you going to do that?
It's a very good point, and actually I was speaking to Tracy the other day, who was telling me about when she did a similar exercise and the importance of delivering that training actually to the board. So it's not just the responsibility of us, of people like yourselves, to kind of get trained up and be ready. It's very much a shared responsibility that they need to be kind of on board with making sure that they're being welcoming and they're making the space appropriate. And so we have talked, it's on my radar about delivering some training for the boards and the chairs, and as part of the mapping I'm kind of talking to chairs a bit, and hopefully we'll get them very much on board with this sort of training process. And I also hope that the opportunity for advocates to kind of feedback about board meetings and give information back will kind of not, nothing's going to address that, but will kind of play into that idea about looking at those power balances. If our advocates can actually say, well, this is the feedback I want to give to the meeting and this is what I want to bring. So just that shared responsibility it's that's part of it.
I'd say, I love this. I'm all for sort of cross collaboration and information sharing. But I went to the Healthy Weight workshop on Tuesday in Manchester, representing third sector leaders group, and that was Mid Yorkshire NHS Trust. It was Lisbon, Lincoln staff, but I think it was at the behest of Anne Hartley. So a very rich room of expertise and professionalism, and me. But I have to say it was a very open environment. I felt heard, definitely, and I think it's also an opportunity to, obviously at the top level, to be part of that decision making process, strategy making and so on, and to feed back to the sector, but also as a mechanism to support the sector. So if there, this came up on Tuesday, so if there is a particular need for something to be addressed, this one was obesity, what are we doing as a sector already that can benefit that particular outcome? So unbeknownst to me, so we're doing latest on box size on Wednesday afternoon. People already knew about it, but nobody's sending anybody to it, you know, so it's just like, well, why not? If you know about it, and it can tick a box, not tick a box, but it can actually be effective, it's already happening. You don't have to re-spend, you don't have to reinvent, so we can really inform what's going on and how it can already help. Does that make sense?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
I think that information sharing is so important, and that's signposting, and I think actually the reality is that people from the voluntary sector will go to these meetings and will have lots of actually the answers to some of these questions, and that's why it's so beneficial and why it should be happening really.
I really like the idea that the tide is changing in terms of voice and people speaking to each other. I think the idea of people in a senior role know everything and they're just going to input what the ideas out to the rest of the people it's become a thing in the past. Definitely in Wakefield that I've realised and noticed now, and that conversation, speaking to people and valuing people's comments and opinions is such an important thing in my life, and it's great to see that it's happening on a much bigger scale in different organisations. So from my point of view, it's a lovely thing to see and what to be part of.
Look, so we've got any takers?
I think it's
Potentially, but I was going to say something else.
But I've signed up to this means you're already signed for advocate now, so I'll tell you that at the start.
Yeah, I think it's great as well, and I think it'd be really interesting to see how that kind of, I think on one of the slides it was the VSC Voices Assembly, which I thought was quite nice, and how this develops in parallel actually, and we might naturally find that one of them becomes the more formal public, what does the VCSE sector do, and the other one might be the more informal peer, almost personal development support. I think, I mean, it's part of that is part of doing that, isn't it? But yeah, I think it'd be really interesting. But I think this is a massive step forward. It's really quite exciting, and also even I'm from one of the bigger organisations, and I'm also thinking, oh, I really want to do it, but I don't know how I'm going to fit it in. So I don't know how you guys that are like, you know, one or two people bands running a whole centre are going to manage it, but this is a massive step forward, and I think, yeah, it's a really good opportunity.
Absolutely, it's the opportunity.
Yeah.
I think it's great. I think it's been long needed, and you know, sometimes trying to get into boards and influencing what's happening is so challenging as individual organisations. So it's great. I do share Jim's view on that power equity and how we do that. It's not just about. I feel like the person going in could be put at a position where they're being welcomed because they're a bit special. They're not very experienced, and we've got to look after them, when actually there's just loads of expertise that person can bring individually and from the sectional like connections. And I worry a little bit. I think it's great that they'll be able to give feedback after the meeting, but God, it's got to be a brave person that goes, this were rubbish, that were rubbish, I changed that, felt like this, and then they have to go and sit in that room again. So that's my clumsy way of saying, when asked to give feedback, it could put them in quite a precarious position, I think, and it might be good if the whole board are encouraged to give feedback, not just about that person being there, but about the meeting in general. So that brings the equity in again. It kind of singles out the person who's invited in and had all this training, because you know it can put them at a slight disadvantage to be seen as you know, we're opening our doors to you and now you're lucky kind of thing. So yeah, I've probably not put that across very well, but
No, I think that's a really good point. And if you have any further kind of ideas about that whole power dynamic piece and how we can shape that a bit more, then I'm really keen to kind of hear them and think about ways we can do that, because I think you make a really good point about we don't want them to be singled out and be this kind of token one person. They've had all this training. It's not. It shouldn't be like that. So, any thoughts about how we can improve that? I'd really well.
I also would argue that, you know, I love that support package, lots of meetings I come to. We'll just do a bit of prep before and the debrief after, it'd be marvellous.
Bit of a team talk before you go in.
We all need a bit of coaching.
It's a walk-on music.
Some power posing.
I think that's what I like. Now we need to take the responsibility as well of identifying those that may not be at that level yet to go into those meetings. You know, it's great when people want to be involved, but it can be. I know I'm trying to say what you guys said. You know, you don't want to put somebody in a really vulnerable position that reflect then on their own group or their organisation.
I think that's the beauty of the deputies and being able to be part of the network without being an advocate. I think that you've really thought about that and really built in that progression for the sector, which I think is really good.
And hopefully the variety of opportunities. So it's not nice to think about it like a hierarchy, but in some ways there are meetings where maybe it's a bit more high pressure or a bit more responsible, or lots of kind of heads of service, that kind of thing, where as part of that selection process, and there will be like a voting process, and we want people from the community to be choosing the people, but that selection process and that matching process will hopefully ease some of that, so that the right person is going to the right meeting, and then, like you say, people who are interested and want to be involved can have some of that training and support and be a deputy or have that succession support, but go to kind of one of there's lots of meetings that come up which are more kind of, which are slightly less formal, or so there's hopefully there'll be a bit of a matching process about finding the right places for people to go to and to get that experience and to have that kind of that role. Yeah. Did you want to say something?
I was just going to say that I think very generally we are knocking on an open door. You know, this has been funded through the council and the HCPs, the NHS. So they have funded us to be able to do the work, but there is also an amount for backfill. So it doesn't completely solve, you know, how people engage, but it is some acknowledgement of the value, of the importance of the role. And it can, in some circumstances, allow you to perhaps pay someone else a few more hours to cover you to be able to do it. So it's not a fix-all, but it's definitely it's definitely helpful, and it does acknowledge the position. And I think for most of these boards and groups, there is already a seat for the VCSE sector. Nova gets asked so often, can you come and attend this? Can you come and attend this? Quite often I'll get asked, and I think, I ain't got a clue. Don't talk to me about digital, so I'll take so much time to put me out of office on, you know? So I sit in the digital meeting to try and understand what it is, and very welcomed. And they say, no, it's great to have people that don't know and can question. And I'm like, I don't even know what I don't know. I don't know, you know, so it's about getting the right people. So I think a lot of the groundwork has already been done. The seats are there. And I think having the right people who have got the right support, because sometimes you leave a meeting and you think, what on earth did I say that for? Or, you know, you might just need that debrief where you think, what possessed me to say that? Or, God, why didn't I think of that in the meeting? And now what can I do with it?
Yeah.
So we're all just people and doing our best. And so this is a way that it, hopefully people will be supported enough. And you're absolutely right, Kat. You know, 5 years ago, there's no way I could have gone to a fraction of those meetings and sort of held my own. And there's even days now where I think, oh gosh, you know, this is really hard. So I guess it's just all heading in the right direction, and we might find that there is specific specific training or support that people really value. But
you're right, and it does something else for me, which is that it even though it's already started, it shows that the Wakefield district as a system has got the decision making, not just one council, health, whatever. It's like for this community or for the districts as a whole, there's a shared voice. So it's not just a VCS voice that will help. It's like it then becomes part of a consensus.
I think having different people from the VCSE sector on different boards, but basically saying the same thing, will be really quite powerful, actually.
Can I ask if there's consideration for young people as well in this, in terms of getting a voice from a young person as opposed to somebody who has a lot of years' experience in that sense?
Yeah, it's a really good point. It's not something that I've thought a great deal about. So Young Lives, I guess, have that kind of role where they work a lot with young people's organisations, and we are working with them, particularly around the children and young people's boards. And thank you for bringing it up, because it is a really good
So for the
point.
big conversation, people might have heard the big conversation, we got some peer researchers who were children and young people, so there's ways and means of it, and again we did that through Young Lives as well.
Yeah.
So I've got an interview for a job on Wednesday, and they're very clear that there are going to be young people on there, and they are going to be able to ask questions, and I thought that was really refreshing. Because it would be working with young people, so why on earth would they not be part of the conversation as well, really, which I thought was really refreshing, nice to see. I'm not leaving you back.
That's the day for bombshell.
Honestly, have a couple of days off. Thank you, Lydia.
Yeah,
no, I think that's really exciting. Actually, I'm taking screenshots. This is outside I am of the health and wellbeing strategy, and there is there is definite intention and commitment to supporting the third sector in this way. Right, we are over time, so thank you very much. The next meeting is the first Thursday in April, which I think is February, even. I think it's the 4th of February. So again, we'll do another kind of collation exercise on this. I think what I'll do is work with Alice because it is a couple of months and it's Christmas and everything else seems a long way off. We'll have more communication than just this is the next meeting. Okay, so we'll figure out that. If you have any feedback that you would like to leave us, it's hello@evergreenactive.co.uk. That is a shared inbox, so don't be mean about Andy because he will see it. Wish him well in his new jobs.
Retired.
It's in Spain, that job as well, so.
Oh, is it? Right, yeah. Lovely. hello@evergreenactive.co.uk. Yes, thank you.
And just remind us of the deadline for your competition.
16th of December. We would like a new name, different from the Wakefield Third Sector Leaders Group. We'd like something that encompasses the direction that we're going in, how vibrant we are as a sector and as a group, the important stuff that we do, the great people that we meet, whatever your thoughts are. So like I said, there's only been 2 entries so far, so you're in a good chance.
Are you going to refresh it research later?
We will do, yeah. So I'll like I said, we'll work with Logan to do a follow-up email. So follow us on Twitter, follow us on LinkedIn, follow us on Facebook, and in the nature of sharing is caring, and in order to reach as many people as possible, if you see a tweet, if you see a Facebook post, please like and share. That's all it takes. You don't have to comment on it or anything like that, but the more people that we reach, obviously the richer the more that is. So thank you very much. Thank you for your time. If we don't see you before, have a wonderful Christmas. Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're for biscuit, aren't you?
I might be doing something too late. I just ran out the door again.
Yes, you do. See you.
Enjoy your I'm returning this weekend on
We are limited on, this is the this is our marketing space. So that's why we do a lot of field stuff. We have obviously most of the songs in and simple a mixed bag in your cafe. And well, but simple, but to be fair, there's parking from Lions.
16-year-old me was a really
Songs have gone down here. There's no internet.
This is not just one.
I'll see you.
Anything before the 1st December I hate. Standing in October or first December, that's it. So Santa last weekend, that's it. Straight.
Linda, between us and Linda, sort of all the time.
Thank you very much.
So thank you for your comments. They were really, really.
We are trying to get it all back again. But we've got this place to stand.
I thought we had no contact with connection with the boys. Just seem to naturally go that way.
Yeah. Because I said we're going Saturday, you've got a visual. Visual Saturday.
The formality to say I'm this way, and a bit more formality. I think you're right.
Yes.
Having two prongs in the same place probably wouldn't work in terms of no.
So many meetings in December. What's the